Once upon a time in a far-off land, there lived a great king whose heart was heavy with the sins of his people. They had strayed from the righteous path, and he yearned for their return. He knew that only through sacrifice and suffering could they be redeemed. So he sent out a decree throughout the kingdom, proclaiming a great festival in the city of Jerusalem, and he commanded all the firstborn lambs to be brought before him. On the appointed day, all the lambs were gathered together, bleating and trembling as they awaited their fate. But one lamb, a young and valiant creature named Valius, refused to submit to his fate. Valius was different from the other lambs. He was courageous, strong, and determined to carve his own path in life. When the priest approached him with the sacrificial knife, he mustered all his strength and gave the priest a mighty kick, sending him sprawling on the ground. Seizing this moment of opportunity, Valios dashed past the astonished crowd and disappeared into the bustling city. Now, pursued by the enraged crowd and with the relentless priest hot on his trail, Valius raced through the narrow streets, leaping over hurdles and squeezing through tight spaces. His heart pounded in his chest, and he could hear the angry shouts of the townspeople echoing behind him. Just when he thought he had lost all hope, he stumbled upon a cozy stable hidden down an obscure alley. With a burst of speed, he squeezed through a small opening, and finding himself inside, collapsed on the soft hay, too exhausted to go on. As he lay there, catching his breath, Valius realized that he couldn't stay in the stable. If the townspeople found him, they would bring him back to the square for sacrifice. So, gathering his strength, he stood up and cautiously approached the opening of the stable. Peeking outside, he saw that the coast was clear and slipped out into the busy marketplace. Valius now had a plan. He would escape to a far-off land where he could live the rest of his days in peace. But soon his resolve started to waver. The journey ahead was long and arduous, and the thought of a comfortable life in the city tempted him. As he walked along, his stomach rumbled, and he couldn't help but look enviously at the bakeries and marketplaces. Finally, succumbing to his hunger, he broke into a nearby farmhouse and feasted on their crops until his heart's content. Just then, he heard the sound of approaching footsteps and quickly hid in a corner. It was the farmer's son, and when he noticed the disturbed crops, he became suspicious. He searched high and low, but couldn't find Valius, who was hiding under a pile of hay bales. When the coast was clear, Valius made a dash for the hills, and after many days of walking, finally reached a lush green meadow filled with all kinds of animals. He befriended a wise old donkey who told him about a place called the Promised Land, where the grass was always green and the water flowed with milk and honey. Valius decided to go there, and the donkey, wanting to help him, offered to guide the way. But just as they were about to set off, a group of fierce-looking wolves emerged from the trees and blocked their path. Valius was terrified, but the donkey, with his years of wisdom, knew just what to do. He brayed loudly, startling a nearby farmer who came running to see what all the commotion was about. The donkey quickly explained the situation to the farmer, and without hesitation, he took the wolves away to his home to be fattened up. Then he returned to Valius and they continued on their journey. At last they arrived at the Promised Land, and Valius was overjoyed to find it even more beautiful than the donkey had described. The grass was indeed greener, and the water tasted sweet like honey. Valius spent his days frolicking with the other animals and swimming in the crystal-clear streams, and his nights sleeping under the starry sky, feeling more content than he ever had before. However, not all was as idyllic as it seemed. There was a dark secret lurking beneath the surface of this paradise. Every so often, the once friendly animals would turn on each other in violent fights, and the peaceful land would be stained with blood. Valius couldn't understand why the animals would do such a thing, and he wondered if he should leave and find somewhere else to call home. One evening, as Valius was tending to his sheep, a large and imposing ram approached him. His sharp eyes and aggressive demeanor struck fear into Valius's heart, and the ram let out a menacing snort. Valius tried to ignore him, thinking that if he didn't pay any attention, the ram would eventually go away. But the ram kept coming closer, and before Valius knew it, he was standing right in front of him, staring intently into his eyes. With a sudden surge of courage, Valius stood up to the ram and confronted him. He knew that he had to defend himself, and so the two animals engaged in a fierce battle. Valius fought with all his might, dodging the ram's sharp horns and trying to find a way to defeat him. But no matter how hard he tried, the ram was just too strong. Valius could feel his strength ebbing away, and he began to think that his journey had come to an end. Then suddenly, as if in slow motion, Valius noticed something strange. The ram's eyes, which had been filled with rage and aggression, now looked dull and lifeless. Valius watched in disbelief as the ram's head slowly lowered, and before he knew it, he collapsed to the ground and stopped moving. Valius had never seen anything like this before. He had never killed another animal before, and he wasn't sure what to do. He looked around to see if anyone had witnessed the fight, but he was relieved to see that the others hadn't noticed what had happened. For a moment, Valius felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. He had defended himself against a much stronger opponent and won, but as quickly as that feeling came, it was replaced with a deep sadness. He looked down at the dead ram and realized that he wasn't just a fierce warrior, but also a living creature who had felt pain and fear. Valius felt guilty for killing him, and he struggled with the weight of his actions. As days turned into weeks, Valius couldn't shake the feeling that he didn't belong in the promised land. The ram's death had changed something within him, and he longed to return home. With a heavy heart, he said goodbye to the animals and began his journey back. When he finally returned to the city, it was a changed animal. He was no longer the scared and confused lamb who had run away from the festival. He was stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever before. As he walked through the city gates, he saw the same priest who had chased him all those years ago. But this time Valius didn't run. He stood his ground and looked the priest in the eye. The priest was shocked to see the brave and confident lamb that stood before him. He couldn't believe that it was the same timid creature he had chased so relentlessly. Valius stared back at the priest, and in that moment the priest realized the error of his ways. He had spent his life chasing innocent animals and sacrificing them for no good reason. He had caused pain and suffering to countless families and had forgotten the true meaning of his faith. As tears streamed down his face, the priest fell to his knees and begged forgiveness from Valius and the lamb. Realizing the error of his ways, the priest had finally found the courage to stand up for what he believed in and to fight for the rights of the innocent. No longer would he allow himself to be controlled by fear or the desires of others. With newfound determination, he began to speak out against the cruel practices of the kingdom and to stand up for the rights of the oppressed. Though he faced persecution and danger, he never wavered in his belief that every creature deserved to be treated with kindness and respect. And so, Valius, the once ordinary lamb who had shown extraordinary bravery, became a symbol of hope and courage for all the animals in the kingdom. He showed them that, even in the darkest of times, one small lamb can make a big difference, and that even the mightiest of rams can fall to their knees before compassion and kindness. Thank you for watching the story of Valius, the courageous lamb. If you enjoyed this tale, don't forget to like the video and subscribe for more amazing stories. Until next time, stay curious and keep an eye out for the brave little lambs in your life.